My name is Bill Buckhurst, and I am the director of Playing Shakespeare with Deutsche Bank's production of The Merchant of Venice, which is happening next year. About 2 weeks or so after I knew I was going to be directing the play, I remember I was reading a newspaper, and within the newspaper there were articles about anti-Semitism at football matches. There was an article about businessmen spending £100,000 on a bar bill in central London. There was an article about a young girl who'd run away from her family, and articles about debt, and suddenly you go, well, that's kind of a whole lot of themes which are in this play. So I think it is astounding actually how much there is within this play, which I think that audiences will connect with even 400 years on. I went to go and visit a school and to meet some of the students a few weeks back to talk to them about this play and to ask them what they felt might be relevant in this play for them. And these were 14-year-old students, and the first thing that they all said to me was, well, it's about debt, isn't it? Which was really interesting. So already I feel that this is an element of the production which is really important, and something which really the young people come to see the play, I think will be able to identify with, especially in these times we're living in. One of the really crucial things that we have to do is to think about, obviously, the time that Shakespeare was writing the play, how people might have responded to it, and about literal things like what was Venice like then. He's talking about Venice 400 years ago, and I've read some really fascinating things already about that town and getting a sense of really what it was like and what the sense of it might have been as a place for people in England, living in England at the time. And it feels to me like Venice was a very kind of, for want of a better word, cosmopolitan city, a very bustling, very thriving, very rich city, a kind of hub of Europe and perhaps even of the world, and very much like Shakespeare is describing in the play, a place which people were drawn to because there was money to be made in the merchant world. And looking a bit deeper into that, I was thinking, well, where does Shylock fit into this world? How was the Jewish population treated? It doesn't seem like they were treated terribly well. I mean, that's if we go by what Shakespeare has to say in the play. And it's been fascinating what I've discovered about the Jewish population in Venice at the time, that they lived in a ghetto. They lived in ghettos. Because in England at the time, Jews had been expelled back in about 1270. But in Venice at the time, the Jewish population lived in ghettos. Literally were locked up in these ghettos at night, and then were allowed out during the day. That is a very interesting, for me, getting a sense of what it was like for a man like Shylock to be living in that society. It's really, really important, and that's something which we'll continue to research. There are other things which are really interesting to discover about the world that Shakespeare is living in when looking at other parts of the story. And I think that one of them is, for example, how young women were looked upon, and what it was like to be a young woman growing up in a place like Venice at the time. I've started some initial research, and we'll be obviously finding out a lot more from the research department here at the Globe. What I can gather is that young women generally were very overprotected by modern standards, and an overbearing protective father, like, for example, one might say Portia's father might have been even beyond the grave, and Shylock, of course, might not be so extraordinary in that time. That actually the concerns, I mean, if you think about Shylock, as I say, this is early stages of research. But if we imagine this, a man who is living in a society which is, keeping him separated from the world at large by having to live in a ghetto and having to be in at a certain time at night, it might be that we might decide in rehearsals that actually might explain one reason why he's so protective of his daughter, because there are, it's perhaps a dangerous world for him to be living in. So in terms of design, at this stage, obviously, 3 months away from the first ever rehearsal, I'm working with our designer Simon Kenny on sort of getting a sense of the world that this play, in which this play is set, and we have a deadline which is just before Christmas. We will present what is known as a white card model of the design, and that is a very sort of stripped down version of the way that the set will look. And so up to that point, which is about 5 weeks away, we are just getting a sense of the world and how we're going to go about presenting it for this audience.